A few years back, I had the opportunity to be a sub for the Naples Philharmonic for a special event that was a memorial service for the founder of the Naples Philharmonic, and it featured Brian Stokes Mitchell, the Broadway legend from the original cast of Ragtime. And I got the opportunity only a few days before the performance. I was down in Naples performing with my brother's church, and we were playing with an individual from the orchestra, and he said, "We actually need a sub on guitar this weekend." So I was very honored to be able to be there, and it was a great opportunity to be in an environment that was a bit different than the typical scenario for me. I've played a lot in bars and festivals and theaters and clubs, but I haven't played in those concert halls with an orchestra like that. That was a very special opportunity. So I was glad to be able to enter that environment. There was something funny that happened, though, and what happened essentially was they had an extremely nice person who was organizing all of the details. And she said to me, "Now I understand that because you live in Boston, you probably don't have your white tuxedo with you. So we have one that we can lend you." And I had to laugh. They said, it's a white tie event. And I'm sitting there trying to pretend like I even know about white tie. So if you're anything like me, you might not even know this, and maybe you do. I thought black tie wearing a tuxedo was as fancy as it gets. There is a whole other level beyond that. It's called white tie. Black tie is almost semi-formal. I thought wearing a suit was formal. Turns out, according to the actual dress code of gentlemen, for real formal events, a suit is informal wear. A tuxedo is like semi-formal. And true formal, actual formal wear is the white tie tuxedo. So, needless to say, I did not have one of those at home, and they lent me one, and I was able to do the gig. I learned a lot that weekend, and I had an opportunity to go back down there and play with the orchestra. So, you never know where you might find yourself. Welcome to Earth Tones, episode 5. Today we're talking about the concept of metamodernism in music and how these different disciplines are meeting in today's culture. Whether that's me finding myself in a white tie tuxedo, playing my music in all these different places. We have a lot of meeting of disparate styles and things going on these days. But first, a sound from our beautiful earth. That was a very interesting sound. I thought that those were ducks at first, but my friend Bridget, I was telling her, we were sitting around the campfire the other night, and I said, I have this podcast, and we're listening to snippets of sounds from random environments, like found sounds, things that come from the actual earth on my new podcast. And she said, "Oh, I love to record random sounds." And it occurred to me, this would be a great opportunity to get more people involved. We should be having folks send these in. So Bridget sent me that. That is the sound of croaking frogs that are around the Boggy Creek in East Austin. So when I first heard it, I thought, man, they sound like ducks or something, or geese. But believe it or not, those are frogs. So thank you, Bridget, for sending that in. Now for a bit of old news. This week, I grabbed a copy of Tape Op off the magazine rack here. And this actually isn't very old news. This was last February, or 2 Februaries ago, February 2024. And I pulled out a little article that I got a kick out of with Kim Deal from the Pixies and the Breeders. And she spoke to them. Really fascinating article about analog recording through the years, starting her own studio, recording. In the very beginning, she had no access to advanced type of equipment, was just going to figure things out, and started her entire road to recording by learning first to build cables. She said that there wasn't a store to be able to buy the amount of cables that they were going to need. So the first thing she did on her recording journey was to learn how to build cables and soldering. I got a kick out of that. That's amazing. I probably learned that skill a lot later in life than I should have, but man, it's invaluable when you look at how expensive cables are. Every one that you can build saves you a ton of money. I pulled a little quote out of this. Kim Deal, what a fantastic musician with such an interesting history. I got this takeaway from it towards the end of the article, because this is Tape Op. This is specifically a engineering-focused magazine. She says, "That's another good technical skill for anybody in the studio. Keep your effing mouth shut and engineer. That's number one, I think. I bet Albini would even say that's number one. That and make me a good coffee." It sounds harsher than it is. It's true. They were talking about how important it is to let musicians be able to listen, and even if they're not saying anything, be able to just be with their thoughts. I think that's one of the big things that I like about having a studio and working with different bands, is that since I'm a musician, I appreciate that, and I feel like it's important to acknowledge that people in the middle of a creative process are often very sensitive, and we have to be cautious. We have to, encourage them and joke around, keep things light, but also give people their space to be able to be themselves and to not interject all that much. So Kim Deal, wonderful artist. The Breeders, the Pixies, legendary piece of old news. Kim Deal speaking to Tape Op last year. You can find that article online, I'm sure. So today we're talking about Metamodernism. Do you know what Metamodernism is, everybody? Have you ever heard that word? Am I the first time you're ever hearing that word? This word has actually brought me a lot of peace this year, because it allowed me to understand a little bit more of the time period that we're in. So essentially, what we can think of metamodernism, it's the combination of elements of the modern era with the postmodern era. And modernism would be characterized in this lens with by sincerity. So imagine thinking, okay, all of these modern inventions, these newfangled gadgets, inventions, and innovations, they're all genuinely better for the world. All of these things from the Industrial Revolution, all these inventions and machines, they are just pure, actually good, and progress is coming to humanity because of their invention. And then, of course, in the 20th century, we experienced postmodernism, which was to look at that with a bit of cynicism, and it's characterized with irony. So you look at sort of almost the hubris of modernism and have a laugh at it, have a go at the fact that we would so sincerely think that all of these innovations would necessarily be good, and to acknowledge that, of course, a lot of inventions and innovations, in fact, come with a lot of disastrous repercussions. So we're now at a time that it is a combination of modernism and postmodernism, because where do you go once you've started to say, well, all of that innovation is silly? The thing is that there's a lot of good that comes from trying and developing something and sincerely putting in an effort to have a tradition that is taken to advanced levels. We're feeling right now like we don't necessarily want to just continue to criticize those types of disciplines in a postmodern type of way. Everything that is approached with irony, we're starting to have a little bit of a shrug about. Like, well, okay, maybe we took things too seriously, And then maybe we had a go at laughing about that and seeing that it, wasn't everything that was cracked up to be. But now what do we do? What do we do musically now that we want to we're still here. We want to take opportunity of this life, and we want to go back to traditions that we can get some joy from and some beauty out of. And we also want to not necessarily take them so seriously that we're inhibited by them. So what we're finding today is that there's a resurgence of traditions. People that really care about playing in a style very authentically. That is exciting because there's people who are going into specific genres, like, say, old-time music, characterized by, say, like New Orleans banjo and early guitar work. People that make that their entire field of study. There's people who are going back to traditions in Celtic music, classical music. And of course, there's always going to be people that are making a hybrid, but we're entering a time now where we're looking to be able to, and the key word that comes up with this word metamodernism, is to oscillate between the modern sensibility and the postmodern. So the reason why this has been interesting to me is that I've often struggled with thinking, man, I really want to create like the ultimate fusion music. I want to create something that has completely absorbed the blues foundation and the reggae foundation and the Celtic foundation. And I'll put all of these things together. And I learned over time that it was going to take more than one lifetime, because a single lifetime can be spent mastering any one of these traditions. And so I've done a lot of musical experiments that would often leave me feeling like I was only superficially involved in some of these genres, thinking like, well, how do I become genuinely the bedrock musician playing from the source of these things? The reason why metamodernism has appealed to me is that the idea is you can go between these different disciplines and you can take it very seriously, and you can also have a bit of a laugh about it. So the reason why it's comforting is that I felt like, wow, I'm not the only one. We're all experiencing this. We are all in a time where it's difficult to find which lineage, which path you're a part of. We're not very clearly able to see that there's one thing that we ought to be doing because that's our home. We're finding that we genuinely want to study something sincerely and develop it and contribute to it, but also we have a pluralism of the different disciplines, and that is also the case in spirituality. So in a metamodernism sense of understanding today, we have a lot of people that are returning to the church. They're finding they have a lot of benefit from the community. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, you saw numbers really decreasing in attendance of church because people were tired of the dogmatic aspect, the control of their life, being told what they should do and think, the guilt trip, all of these things that were limiting. But then you throw out the tradition and you've also lost community. You've also lost having somebody who can help you through your challenges and a community that supports one another. So we're in this time of metamodernism where we are oscillating between the sincerity of something like, I want to be a part of a tradition and I want to innovate within it and I want to be a part of a lineage, and also the postmodern aspect of, and I know that I can jump between these different things and we can criticize it. We can see things in their context as not being the be-all, end-all solution for all of our problems. So the next phase after this might be the true integration. We might be able to actually hold these seemingly conflicted opinions or styles and be able to actually gel them and have that music of all musics that I suppose I'm dreaming of someday creating, the integration. But for now, we're living at a time where we're oscillating between things. We're trying things on. We're seeing what resonates with us. And that's encouraging to me to think that, hey, this is kind of what's going on at this time. We have a sense of what should we do now? We don't want to just be up in the air forever. We want to find something to be a part of that's grounded, but we can't, go back to thinking that that's the only way to do things when we know that there's a myriad ways of approaching any given problem of life. And we know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So I'm interested in metamodernism, and I'm interested in your take on it. Definitely let me know if metamodernism has been something you've heard about and if it's influencing anything to do with the way you're making music. It's encouraging to me, like I said, just because of the fact that it makes me feel like, okay, I'll take it easy, knowing that we're all doing this. We're all bouncing between different things. I think that that's encouraging. So as an example of what I'm working on, in the spirit of let's combine what we're into, these different traditions, and still make something that's our own, I am interested in the blues and the Celtic and the reggae combination. And this is a little bit of how I try to approach some of those styles. So here's the little melody that I picked up out of an old Cape Breton fiddle book. So I have these little Celtic melodies, but I also have my blues. And I've got my reggae sensibility. So I'm imagining the style between them. So I'm still experimenting with this, but the way that I'm approaching it, especially from that meta-modern idea and that lens, is let's learn Celtic tunes from the source, not just necessarily imitate them, but open up a book, learn them, check them out, learn them note for note and experiment with playing that actual style. Same with reggae. I've played reggae in so many different contexts for so many years now, and play Jamaican reggae with Jamaicans. Play some legit stuff if you can, if there's an opportunity to study the roots of that. Same with the blues. I've played blues my whole life. Go back and listen to Mississippi John Hurt. Try to get the sounds of the real thing, and then for fun, go between them. See what's going on. See what you like. It doesn't have to be a superficial fusion of things. It doesn't just have to be kind of a little bit of mimicking. You can embrace a depth of the style and still make something that combines them for what appeals to you for now. And maybe a few lifetimes from now, maybe 100 years from now, people will be able to integrate this and they will be able to play like the Earth's style of music that combines the bedrock of all of these things. But for me, it's comforting to know that we're living at a time where everybody's doing that. We're going back to traditions and we're looking at them through a contemporary lens and saying, what can we do to take what we like of these things and still honor the traditions? How can we oscillate between that sincerity and irony and combination and see where we're at and experiment a bit? What's on the turntable this week? The Ali album by Krung Bin. with Vu Farcatore. He's Ali Farcatore's son. They made a amazing album together, 2022. This is so great. The way that they recorded it, I saw an interview with Krungbin, and Mark Spear was talking about, they essentially jammed, and they would have these like 13-minute long recordings that they edited down into the essential parts, and they grabbed a few minutes of each. I thought that was really interesting. Once I had heard the album, I heard about that and the way that they made it, and I was really interested because they sound like they're just compositions. So the fact that these were things that were excerpts, really, it's amazing how well it was edited and pulled out. Check that album out. It's so great. So something that helped me this week, listening, being flexible. This last Sunday in church, Dennis Montgomery was not. He was there. He was in Japan with Berkeley, and we had a sub, Adam Littlejohn, playing Hammond organ, and he was so fantastic. And immediately, as is pretty typical, the songs that we had prepared to play were immediately put into another key, and he was so great. He said before we started, he came around and shook everyone's hand and said, "So, I like to play what I feel in the moment. You're going to notice that I'm going to reharmonize everything. So just keep listening, and we'll follow the spirit and play the music as it comes to us." So the key takeaway for me this week, what was helpful, was just being open to listening. When the chords might be different than the ones that you've learned, not only are they in a different key, but they're going to be substituted for other chords in real time. There's no other option than to just listen and to let the music kind of happen automatically. Because if you try to use too much of your intellect instead of your ears, you'll probably make a decision where maybe he zigs and you zag. If you just listen, then you're a part of the spirit, and you can hear that certain things are likely to happen, and you just follow along. It's difficult to do that. You have to really surrender some of the ego of it, be willing to play fewer things, be able to just see how you can contribute. But for me, listening was the big thing that helped me. Just listen and let the music happen automatically. All right, that is episode 5 of Earth Tones. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Jake Pardee, reminding you we are a distinctly musical species on a fantastically musical planet. Let me know what you think about metamodernism. It's still a new concept to me, so I'm playing with it a bit. Send me a message. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.